It's 25 minutes to 5. My next guest has been described as a titan of Queensland business and politics, and over a lifetime that's involved working 7 careers, we think, at a rough count. Anyhow, Ashley Goldsworthy, my guest, has decided to write his story. And former Prime Minister John Howard is launching Ashley Goldsworthy's autobiography in this town tomorrow. But I'm glad to say that he's come into the studio. Thanks for coming in, Ashley Goldsworthy.
Thanks, Steve.
I have to ask you were involved in the SGIO a few years back.
A long time ago, yeah, I was Deputy CEO.
Can you just remind me of it's got a bit of a history in this town. So it started as the State Government Insurance Office,
Yes.
then it was privatised to the SGIO. Then
Yes.
pick up the story for me from there. Where did it go from there?
Well, then the QIDC, SGIO and Metway became Suncorp.
Right.
And I established the SGIO Building Society, which became Suncorp Building Society.
Right, okay.
And it's gone on from there.
Okay. And the whole aim of the Building Society then was to provide, attractive mortgage loans,
Yes.
specifically to Queensland, but also I think where a lot of the capital was sort of attracted to Queensland, as I recall back that time.
Yeah, we were
clarify for me?
restricted to lending at that stage in Queensland.
Okay.
And the Building Society grew in 7 years while I was CEO, it grew from nothing to $1 billion.
Okay.
The second largest building society in Australia at the time.
Okay. So how do you feel about, it looks, I don't know if it's say it's going to be swallowed up by the ANZ, but it certainly looks, it's going to benefit the ANZ more so than Suncorp to me.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm a client of both ANZ and Suncorp. So.
Right.
But it's a long time and I don't know the details of it, but I think Suncorp will disappear. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And I'm not quite sure that that's to the good.
The big advantage, or the reason why there was such political pressure back in the 80s, to have the SGIO stay and Suncorp as some sort of building society, is to give an economic edge to Queensland residents to get their house, to get their mortgage, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And that's now gone, or going.
Well, yes, perhaps. I can't forecast obviously what will happen, but I don't think it's necessarily a good move for Suncorp.
Steve Johnson, the Chief Executive Officer, said it won't reduce competition, but in my mind, how can it not? Can you speak to that, Ashley?
Well, I was listening to his argument while you were interviewing him, and you expect a position in his position to say that sort of thing because he's obviously in favour of the acquisition, and as you pointed out, it may be a merger. But for 3 years ago to keep the brand separate, well, that's fine. But during that period, there'll be a tremendous change in the final outcome.
They'll be looking for efficiencies, economies of scale, all of the things to underpin the share price. What they really need is market support.
That's right.
Don't they?
He didn't answer your question. He evaded that.
Yeah. But he said, he sort of danced around the job losses thing.
Yes,
but
obviously.
they have to get, to make that work, they have to get efficiencies.
Logically, it's the outcome.
And efficiencies usually mean, sorry, Ashley Goldsworthy, we no longer require your services.
That's
normally.
correct.
Right, okay.
That's correct.
And did that happen when the whole SGIO thing went to Metway?
No, it didn't actually.
Because you were growing a building society,
that's right.
not merging banks.
That's right.
And that's the difference.
Yep.
And that's what many of my listeners are frustrated at, that some of them have said that this is a lazy way for ANZ to grow their business in Queensland. They're just buying customers.
True.
Ashley Goldsworthy is my guest. Your biography is being launched tomorrow by former Prime Minister John Howard. Can you give me a bit of a list as to how many boards you've served on? Because I want you to rattle them off for me, Ashley.
No, I really can't rattle them off.
Because you can't remember.
Well, 20 to 30.
All right. You describe yourself in the book as a man of action rather than intellect. Why? What do you mean?
Well, I'm trying to get the message across that you don't have to be a star in any field to succeed. And I'm a very ordinary person, and I try to illustrate that in the book. But by hard work and commitment, you can succeed. And I try to get that message around to people, ordinary people, who are performing without fuss or fanfare, succeeding through hard work and commitment. You don't have to be the brightest or the smartest or whatever.
Tell me a story. Give me an example. Tell me a metaphor where you achieved something, but you weren't necessarily the brightest or the smartest, Ashley Goldsworthy.
Well, it's pretty difficult to identify issues like that, but I mean, for example, when I was running Jennings as Australia's largest construction company, we were trying to build South Bank, and there was a church in the middle of it, and they wouldn't sell to us. So I had a meeting with them one night and came up with the idea that if they would sell their land to us, I'd build them a church for nothing and give it to them, which I did. I built a church for $6 million and gifted it to the parishioners. So that gave us total control of that land to build Southgate.
Okay. So it means you know how to deal, trade, work out what someone wants.
Absolutely.
Say, okay, I want what you've got. Here's my solution to try and give you,
And it's all about innovation.
Yeah, okay.
Innovation. See, I became a CEO of a variety of companies, insurance, banking, construction, etc., and I'm a great believer in CEOs coming in from the outside, bringing a new view, not being brought up in the industry.
Why? What does having a chief executive from the outside of the organisation
You bring a new perspective.
Right, okay.
Okay. And the role of a CEO is very specific, and it's not necessarily industry-oriented. You don't have to be a banker all your life to run a bank.
Tell that to the current crop of bankers. I mean, because I know, that's another story for another time. My guest is Ashley Goldsworthy. He's written a memoir called Ordinary Bloke, Extraordinary Life. You were involved in computing in the early days. People may not realise that this is not that far back, but it was, the late 80s?
1962.
62? Oh, okay. So you better tell me. So you were awarded an OBE for your service to computer science.
Yeah, that was in 1982.
Okay, so what did you grasp about computer technology early on that you realised would change people's lives?
The significance was the I and not the T. It's the information that's important, not the technology. And I've written 140 papers on IT and management, and the message I try to get across, particularly to business, was the use you make of the information. The technology is just a mechanism, but too many people concentrated on the technology rather than the information.
And you realised it was the information that was all important.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How did you help bring about the introduction of ATM machines into our lives, Ashley Goldsworthy? Because I used to hate the damn things, but now it's the only way I can get any cash.
Yeah, and they're closing them down.
And they're closing them down. And you've got to pay for it. I've got to pay to get my own money.
That's right.
So you're responsible, Mr. Goldsworthy.
I saw them as a technology which was going to obviously help the banking industry. At the time, my chairman said, no, the research shows that the cost per transaction is greater than human tellers, therefore we don't want them. I said, well, I disagree. I said, tell me how you justify a lifeboat.
Okay, right.
It's going to become an essential part of the business, and they did.
Very quickly.
Yeah, and we introduced them, and we used, you might remember Stuart Wagstaff.
I do, very much. I used to love Stuart Wagstaff.
Yeah, we used him in our television ads.
Did you really?
Yes.
Well, this is before or after he started Media Watch.
Oh, they were well.
Oh, no, sorry, wrong Stuart. Oh, sorry, that's Stuart Littlemore. Stuart Wagstaff was the commercial advertising guy. Sorry, yes. Yeah, I'm getting my Stuarts mixed up. So explain what's going on now, because now if I want to get cash, there's no point going to a bank, even to get my own money out.
That's right.
I go to an automatic teller machine and the sods charge me to get my own money out.
Yes.
But even then they're disappearing.
Well, they're charging you for the service.
Right.
Not for your money. They're charging you for the service.
Yeah. I blame you.
Yeah,
and so you used to be able to invest in them. Like I knew guys in this town who were investing in ATMs around the region, but that seems to be dying off. Is it just that cash is disappearing slowly?
Well, cash is disappearing, but online transactions are becoming so much more important and critical and central that going to an ATM, it no longer has the benefits that it used to have, because now you can just sit down at your laptop and do your transactions.
Okay. My guest is Ashley Goldsworthy. If I was to meet you at a party and I'd say, tell me about yourself, what would you tell me, Ashley Goldsworthy?
I guess I'd tell you that I work hard. I always have. And I keep on telling my children, grandchildren, my great-grandchildren are a bit young to understand yet, but I've got to say integrity and hard work. is what underpins success. And I've tried to illustrate that. If I can give an example, when I was running training organisations, training apprentices, the federal government introduced what they called the Vet Fee Help Scheme, which was a disaster. You could enrol a student, charge him whatever you liked. We were charging $30,000 for a diploma. And once the federal government approved the enrolment, they paid you up front. Didn't matter whether the student ever did any study. I thought that was bad, so from day one I would only enrol students for 2 subjects. So they didn't create an enormous debt, and if they didn't like what they were doing, they could give it away. Now, eventually, the federal government mandated that system. But in the meantime, organisations in this state were clearing $200 and $400 million a year.
So they were gaming the system.
Yes.
They were rorting the system, basically.
But it was legal, and that was the argument that was used. I thought it was unethical, even though it was legal. So
of course it was unethical.
So I didn't do it.
Yeah, they were using taxpayers' money as a cash cow.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you want to name those organisations now for me? Okay. No. Chicken. My guest is Ashley Goldsworthy. He's got a memoir that's about to be launched in this town tomorrow. It's called Ordinary Bloke, Extraordinary Life. It's being launched by John Howard in the city tomorrow. Which has been your favourite role? Not necessarily business role, but your favourite role. One that you feel, I really enjoyed that. I got a lot of personal reward out of that. I can't imagine you doing something you didn't get a personal satisfaction out of.
No, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I got a tremendous personal satisfaction out of Suncorp, but also later on in life in running the business school at Bond University, because it was something I'd never envisaged doing.
Yeah.
And I became Australia's first professor of leadership, and I built up that school, which was adjudged by others, not by me, to be one of the top 20 business schools in Southeast Asia by the time I left after 7 years.
Yeah. It was people forget how revolutionary it was having Alan Bond start a university. It was pretty controversial, but I was at 7:30 at the time, and I think we did quite a few stories sort of questioning the wisdom of this, but it proved itself.
He's got to be given great credit for it, great credit for it.
And so doing that business school is your favourite?
Yeah, because it was challenging and it was something quite outside what I'd expected to do. I mean, I'd spent my life in business, and to be offered the challenge of running a university business school was quite good.
Well, Alan Bond was one Australian controversial business figure. You were also once offered a job by Christopher Skase, another controversial business figure, but you turned the job down. What was the job he offered you?
I got a phone call one afternoon from his lawyer and said Christopher Skase would like to have a talk to you. And this is when I was running Suncorp. And I said, okay. So I went to see him and walked up the stairs. He knocked a hole in the floor to his office.
Right.
And he offered me the job of running his property empire. And I said, well, Christopher, I'm not a property man. I've never touted myself as such. Why are you offering me the job? And he said, well, I've talked to quite a few people, and he said they've strongly recommended you. I said, well, I need to see some information about what you plan to do with your property empire. So his financial advisors gave me quite a lot of information. I went away after studied it for 3 days, came back and said, well, Christopher, if your expectations come true, you'll be a very, very rich man. If they don't, you'll be bankrupt. I think you're going to be bankrupt, so no thanks.
So you turned the job down?
Turned the job down.
And you're proven correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Smart move. You were the only Queenslander ever elected as federal president of the Liberal Party. In a 75-year history of the Liberal Party. But before that, you were prominent in the Queensland Liberal Party during the turbulent years when Joe and the National Party fell out with the Libs.
Yes.
Do you have any reflections on that time?
Yeah, I was Vice President of the Queensland Division during that time, and I was targeted, I won't go into the details, but in many ways by Bajocki Peterson. He tried to get me in Parliament through a loan I got through the Society.
What do you mean he tried to get you?
Well, the leader of the opposition at that time, Labor Party, said that I had a loan from the Society which was not appropriate. It was a discounted rate, and Joe put the investigators onto me, and they investigated me for 3 months and found that there was absolutely nothing wrong.
All right. So Joe was after you?
Oh, yes.
And this is because of the split between the Liberals and the Nationals? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're the only Queenslander who's ever been elected federal president of the Liberal Party in Australia.
Correct.
How do you see the Liberal Party today, or some of its issues it's facing at the moment, Ashley Goldsworthy?
Oh, it's not the Liberal Party I was in.
What is it?
It's not the Liberal Party John Howard was in either.
Okay, well, and what is it? Because a lot of people are asking that question. What is the Liberal Party today?
I think it's become too interested in serving too many interests, and it needs to, again, make itself very clear as to what it is about. And I think people out there aren't quite sure, and of course they're now being distracted by a whole range of other organisations, the Greens, etc., etc., etc.
Okay.
So they've got a task ahead of them, I think.
Have they ever come to you? Has anyone ever?
No.
Party said, Ashley, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you think? What do you think's going on? You know, as a wise old man of the party or anything like that?
I'm just a feather duster.
What's that like? Today's peacock is tomorrow's feather duster.
That's right.
You've been plucked.
Exactly.
Ashley Goldsworthy is my guest. He's written a memoir, Ordinary Bloke, Extraordinary Life. So, what's the most important thing you've learnt in your business life, in your corporate life, in your other interests, Ashley Goldsworthy?
Very simple. Integrity. Don Bradman was asked in the last interview he gave before his death, what is the most important thing that you could say in your life? He said, integrity. And there is no doubt about it. Eisenhower has said exactly the same thing. Without integrity, you are nothing. And my message is integrity is the basis on which you've got to build your life, your career, and your decisions.
I have to ask you one other question. I understand it's true you used to have ABC Radio on it because it would give you something to yell at in the daytime. Is this